What's up, nerds? Here we are again. This is week 2 of Fight Picks. This is the Well-Informed Nerd with Davey Dees and Mason Trace. I'm Mason Trace.
And I'm Dave
This is
Dees.
Davey Dees. All right. If you are listening now for your second week, then you probably had a great week.
Hmm.
So if you took my advice last week,
I did.
you did, didn't you?
I did.
If you took my advice last week, you're going to be up. So, when I did my bets, if you'd have followed every bet that I made on the podcast, then you would have went from $1,500 investment to $2,476 collected. If you took my actual advice and bet the ways that I said, as in there was a couple fights that I said to steer clear of, and there was a bet that I don't have access to personally, so I didn't really make that one on the podcast. That was the under on the Tom Aspinall fight. And if you took all those advices, you would have done even better than that. So essentially, what I do is I usually go and I make a bunch of parlays. This time I even had an underdog ticket. I had three triple underdog parlay, and I bet $5 to win $105. So that was my best bet of the week. I also did this giant round robin ticket here. So with the round robin, I picked 12 fights. That's the maximum that they would let me pick. And I did 9-way round robins for a nickel apiece, which is essentially nickel parlays, every 9-person combination of the 12 picks.
Okay.
So I did one of those for me and one of those for you. So from an $11 ticket, if we'd have picked all 12 fights right, we would have won $3,600.
We did not.
We did not. We picked 10 fights right, which brings us home about $114.
Yes, which I was thinking it was one of those like nice, solid rip-off bets where we either had to go X and O or lose. So when you told me we were 10-2, I was like, ah. And then you're like, you get $100, ah.
Right. No. I did a round robin for nickel bets. So none of them individually is worth a ton, but this was an $11 ticket that had a potential to win $3,600. I also took Chris Dalcow. That was our pick of the week on the podcast. I bet straight up on him and won. I had messaged you and I said, hey, we need a way in place to like switch my bet of the night, or maybe place a second bet of the night or whatever, because by the time the fight happened and I did a little bit more digging, I realized there's no way this Chikadze guy was going to lose. And by the time the fight went, he was a plus 150 underdog. So I bet heavy on him too. Both of those were involved in my parlay here with Ilya Tupuria, another underdog. That was a great pick that brought it home. So those three underdogs made me some money. Then I have I took about 2 of those guys with Tom Aspinall. I told Tom Aspinall was a lock, so I just threw him on a couple parlays just to spice it up a little bit. Minus 700 isn't very flavorful. And then I had the Tagir Ulenbekov, Tom Aspinall, since they're both huge favorites. I paired them up with my lock of the night, the Jiga Chickadees or whatever, and that was a $5 to win $20 kind of bet. So overall, I had an amazing weekend picking fights. And the fights that I didn't pick, or that I said I didn't want to pick, those were some good ones to stay away from.
Yeah. I would say
That being said,
overall, I would say that I've seen an effect on you from the success of your ego becoming even larger than before. And right before we started this podcast, he brought up the idea of kicking me off of the podcast after 1 week ever in the podcast. Because of 1 week of success, he's ready to get rid of me, the guy who records and edits and all that, sets up the audio, everything. It's just, you can go. I got this covered. That's how it works now. So it works. So I'm happy for you. I'm happy for me.
well,
I'm happy for all of our friends being successful, following you along, and anybody at home that followed along.
well, you're supposed to come watch the fights.
Yeah,
You didn't come watch the fights.
that's true.
So if you had come and watched the fights, I feel like you would be like in this with me.
Right.
And right now, you're not really feeling. You need to come watch the fights this Saturday.
Give me a ride home.
I offered a
You
ride.
offered a one-way ride. What am I walking? I'm Ubering with some stranger nowadays. Supposed to just
So
get
if
some
you got
jamoke?
us to pick you up on the way to the casino, that would be the Dan picking you up, and then I would drop you off at the end of the night. That would work out.
That would work out. Then you guys just
But
don't give me
you gotta
Corona.
ask those favors yourself. I don't want to be the guy that always asks everybody favors for Davey.
Yeah, that's is that how it is? Does that happen for you a whole lot? That you feel like you're really cornered into that role, like in your life now? That's like one of your major things that you have going on. That's what most people do say about you. They're like, "Oh, you mean that guy who's always asking for favors for Davey?" Yes,
I
that's the
mean,
guy. That's the guy I'm
a
talking
few.
about.
There's a few favors that I've asked for Davey. I think it's just your turn. You know. Anyway, I'm not nearly, disappointingly, I'm not nearly as excited for this week's
Uh-huh.
picks.
We've been talking about it leading up to the show. Not quite as much of a lock, but probably means really good fights to watch if it's hard to pick.
Well, it's not even that. It's kind of worse. So last week we had a bunch of pick'ems and a couple fights that were rated as a favorite and an underdog when they were closer to pick'ems, and even some fights that in my opinion, were rated completely wrong, like they were backwards. But this week, I agree with these lines. Like these lines are all fair.
So it's not the fights necessarily that'll be great, but it's the bets that are just hard to pick on either side because they got good lines. Lines move a lot for fights, don't they?
Well, not a whole lot
Okay.
unless somebody's betting a whole bunch of money.
Yeah,
But so essentially, the main let's just go over the card real quick.
let's do it.
Do a quick one this week. First fight is James Malarkey, and he might be a little bit out of order. Apologize. I'm reading from the odds page and not the card itself page. First fight is Jamie Malarkey versus Fares Ziam. Jamie Malarkey is a minus 145 favorite, and I think he probably wins it. Uh, Next fight is Saeed Nurmagomedov. It's the same last name as Khabib, but they are not related.
Okay.
Okay, so there are three MMA fighters with that last name that are known by the public, and only two of them are related. This one is not related.
Hmm.
He's fighting against a guy named Mark Striegel. This, if you feel like picking a flyer bet, Mark Striegel might be the one at plus 335. He's like a submission guy, and Nurmagomedov is a striker, but I don't bet against Dagestani people. Period. Like, no,
But
I'm not.
I
I'm
don't
not.
know what that means.
So there's like a small village
Okay.
in Russia, essentially, where the best fighter in the world, Khabib Nurmagomedov, comes from,
Okay.
and his cousin comes from, and his whole camp and everybody that he trains with is just a monster. You know, like
They're the
the
mega
Khabib
aggressive
camp.
guys you were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Russian guys. Don't mess with those guys.
I tend not to. I learned that in poker in my poker career.
Right. So next we got Maxim Grishin at minus 355 against G Antigolov, and minus 355 is not the price I want to pay for the guy I think is going to win the fight. Yeah, I think he's going to win the fight, but what do I stand to win here?
Yeah.
Right. Next one we got Youngjin Park versus John Phillips. Youngjin Park's minus 255. Again, he's going to win this fight.
Okay.
How much money do you want to bet to win $100?
The other guy, you're betting 255 to win an extra 100, right? And then
Yep.
one lucky punch, one lucky kick, one lucky grab of a arm hanging out, something like that. You lose your
Right.
255.
Yep. Next one is Jillian Robertson versus Poliano Botello. Minus 220. This is one of the better values on the card, to be honest. I'm going to take that one for sure in some bets at minus 220, even though not that spicy. Next, we got Matus Gamro and Garam Kutalez something. I'm sorry to every Russian person watching this who I butchered your name. I'm sure you can beat me up. Please don't.
Tell you how bad you are at the names. I never think they're Russian. I never think the person is from Russia. I'm like, this person's clearly a Latin American person, judging by the accent that he's putting on this last name, rolling the R's. So I'm sure you're saying them wrong.
Kutaladze. Anyway,
Yep.
Matus Gamro wins this one easy in my eyes. He's minus 310, so not exciting at all. Okay, up after that you have James Krause versus Claudio Silva.
All right. Now, is that
Uh,
Silva?
no, no, no.
Nope.
There's lots of Silvas. It's
Yeah,
a very
I just didn't
popular
know if
name.
it was part of the family. That's the one thing that I know about fighting.
Um, so plus 135 versus Silva versus James Krause at minus 155, I think is a really fair line. But what that means is the fight is a coin flip. You know what I mean? So I like Krause there at minus 155 is probably where I'm going to bet. After that, you have Jonathan Martinez versus Thomas Almeida. Thomas Almeida is the more known name, which is what I think has pushed him to be the favorite here, even though I feel like this should be just like a straight up pick 'em. So I would probably pick Almeida. I would rather pick Almeida as an even money than minus 135. Uh, then we have Jimmy Crute versus Modestas Bukauskas, and it's minus 330 on Jimmy Crute. I think Jimmy Crute wins it. It might be okay if you want. If you're looking for flyers, Striegel's a decent one, and Bukauskas might be okay. I could see a flyer on him. Plus 270 is a lot of odds. This next fight, okay, Jessica Andrade versus Caitlin Chukagian. I actually really want to see the fight. Like, it's going to be a really interesting fight stylistically. I think Andrade is getting a big push because she's the known name. Like, she's fought for the belt in the 115-pound division. She's also had fights in the 35-pound division, but now she's found her home as a 25-pound division. It's probably where she should have been all along, but the UFC was late to adopt the 125-pound division. I think if she was always in the 125-pound division, she probably would have already fought for titles in the 125 division, etc. That being said, stylistically, I think Caitlin does give her some issues. So I could see this one going either way, and that makes sense with Andrade having a push because of her name, making her the slight favorite here at plus 130 and minus 150. I think I'm going to have to hold out a pick on this one until I see the weigh-ins, and I might not bet it at all.
No wonder you're excited to see the fight then.
Right, so I'm really interested to see the fight, but I don't know who's going to win it.
Yeah.
And the weigh-ins is important to me because you have two people meeting at a weight class. Like, Andrade's never fought at 125 before. I want to see how the weight cut goes and whether she looks big enough to handle her opponent. And then that brings us to the main event, which honestly I think is where most of my money goes this week.
Okay.
So as far as a pick of the week goes, I would love to have an underdog all the time, but instead I'm going to go with a favorite, and I'm going to go with the Korean Zombie minus 185, and probably bet most of my betting on that. I love to do parlays, so I'll probably mix up a bunch of stuff with it, etc. But think I'm going to heavily favor Zombie on everything, which is going to be terrible if Ortega wins, but I just don't see it. Ortega's coming off 2-year. So Korean Zombie is he took 2 years off from MMA to do military in Korea, and he got back from that, and he's 3-1 since then. And the one loss is like a fluky knockout. He won the whole fight and lost in the last second of the fight to a crazy spinning elbow or something. But he's a monster, and he's been killing everybody since he got back.
That's the story everybody that ever lost a street fight to me tells when they get home. They're like, I was beating that fat guy up so bad, and then all of a sudden, one time.
Right. Well, in also there's some backstory to this fight. So I think Ortega wanted to fight Zombie for some reason. Either way, or maybe it was talked about already. Either way, at a UFC, Zombie's fighting, and his posse's there. Part of his posse is Young Park, who's a K-pop star. And part of his entourage, his buddy, his translator, whatever. So Korean Zombie's translator is this super famous guy. Well, Brian Ortega walks up to him in the crowd and is like, "Hey, are you Young Park?" And he's like, "Yeah, man." He stands up like he's about to shake his hand. He goes, "Hey, man, yeah, I'm Young Park. What's up?" And Ortega just slaps him, just bitch slaps him. This guy's not a fighter. He's a fucking K-pop star.
Yeah, I mean, those guys are the opposite of fighters. I'm a middle school teacher, so I know all about the K-pops because there's at least like a third of the girls that are obsessed and a tenth of the boys.
Well, then you should definitely, as a middle school teacher, be rooting for Brian Ortega to get the crap beat out of him this week.
Because he dared to slap a member of, was it BTS? Is he a member of BTS? Because that's the most popular one. BTS.
Dude, I don't know. His name's Young Park.
That I know.
He's in Korean Zombie's entourage.
Okay.
So we're rooting for Korean Zombie to shit stomp Brian Ortega.
Yeah, and what I was asking is, how's he going to do it? Is it going to be a knockout? Is it going to be grab him and twist him? What's it going to be?
It could be a knockout or a 5 round decision, but if you have the access to the odds, I probably would love a first round knockout or a second round knockout bet on the zombie. There's also, let me see. Uh, yeah, there's a couple fights like you could go with like this Grishin and Tugalov fight. You could go with the under. I think that one's going to end pretty quick. Youngjin Park versus John Phillips. Youngjin Park, that one might go the distance. I think Youngjin Park he's a heavyweight, but he's one of those guys that like to take down and smother the guy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I really don't like this card a lot, guys. So what I'm going to say is I'm almost going with all favorites this week, and I'm pretty much willing to ride with the results of that. So just for the record, I'm 10-3 as of last week. 11-3 if you count that under that I told you to pick. But I just don't feel it this week. So I'm not going to put a bunch of money out on any parlays because I don't think there's anybody that's a super lock. I'm just going to bet the main event.
Yeah, I like that. That's a move that I used to pull a lot of the time. We had an old friend named Slick, and his dad was a pretty famous horse trainer, and he would always hit us with the tips. Number 2 is definitely gonna win. You got to box him with this, and you got to book him with that. And I was always the only one who would just be like, I'll just take 500 to show and 200 to win on number 2. And I would do all the other stuff too and have fun with everybody and be like, come on, 11. Oh, no, they fell down. But, like, yeah, I would be the one who's like, oh, man, guys, yeah, our $11 parlays didn't work out. We didn't become, $1,000 heirs, but I'm going to go pick up my 2.5 G's at the window now because I just bet what your dad guaranteed that 2 was going to win. So why not just bet 2? And they're like, oh, sometimes you can get a little too gambly for your own good, don't you think?
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make the calculations real easy for this week's challenge. I'm going to go ahead and lock in myself for every favorite except Striegel at plus 335 and Bocaucus at plus 270.
The Striegel pick just because it's too much of a plus to turn down?
Yeah, I'm just taking the odds.
Yeah.
Those are heavy and a little closer than they should be. So I'm going to take those two underdogs this week. I'm already assuming that I'm going to go 9-2 with my picks because those underdogs I assume are not going to win, but the odds are too good. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead. So my bankroll right now is 24.76.
Yes.
There's 11 fights. I'm going to go ahead and make it $100 on all of the fights except the main event. It's going to have 14.76.
14.76. Oh, booming it.
Double Jeopardy, baby.
Booming it. Oh, this is exciting.
What is it called? What's it called? Daily Double, baby. Daily Double.
Daily Double. I think it's called all the things that we've said so far. No, Double Jeopardy is when round 2, when everything's worth twice. Right, you're right.
Daily Double.
Yeah. I used to play the game. You know what frustrated me about playing that game when we were younger? I always knew the answers and I couldn't spell anything. And they made you use like a Nintendo controller to spell every letter and then yeah. And I would lose. And they'd be like, that's not how you spell Berenstein Bears.
Nobody knows how to spell Berenstein Bears.
Didn't the universe change? Wasn't there a dimensional shift that caused the spelling to change according to Reddit?
Yeah, the Mandela effect. My pick of the week is the Korean Zombie.
Boom.
See you next week, nerds.